Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Meredith and I am one of the CSMs at Blackbaud, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. Just a quick reminder to, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature in Goldcast, and please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Love to see where everyone is from and what organizations you represent. I am going to now hand things over to my colleague, Carrie, who's going to be leading today's session.
Great, thanks so much. All right, welcome everyone. I am here to talk about the visual alignment of the design system. This is a little bit of a part two if you were able to attend my session yesterday. If not, that's totally fine. But we'll kind of get into SkyUX, our design system, and how we're working towards two themes becoming one theme that enabled a lot of additional features and functionality. So with that, let's get started. So just a quick introduction, I guess. So I'm the technical product manager here at Blackbaud for our design system. So I own also a number of other platform capabilities that surround the user experience, like BBID and navigation. So if you've seen things like Omnibar or our navigation, the vertical navigation in RE and XT, that's me, as well as just all of the other front end work that we have across our products. And I've noted this before, but I am not a designer, nor am I an engineer. So I work with an awesome team of developers and designers here at Blackbaud. They make my job really easy because they are fantastic and build lots of awesome things, and I get to talk about it. And I actually am out here in the Portland metro area in Oregon, so if there's any other West Coasters out there. And I've been with Blackbaud since 2021. All right, just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. So we're going to kind of go through a little bit of a history lesson with SkyUX. Hopefully it won't be too boring, but I think it helps paint the picture of how we kind of got to where we are. Then we're going to talk around how we achieve the change around the visual theme and how we kind of move forward, what we will get from doing that, and some Q&A. I just want to call it, I'm saying we a lot, and I mean that both Blackbaud as well as you, our partner and developer community, as well as our end users. There's a lot of functionality and features that we're going to be enabling for everyone. All right, so a history lesson. SkyUX components have been around since 2015 was when the initial library was created. That was built on AngularJS, and it was around until we finally turned it off in 2022. It was an older framework, Angular framework that it was built on. And so a year or two later, after SkyUX 1 release, SkyUX 2 became available. And SkyUX 2 through 4 were on various Angular versions throughout its life cycle. But how you built and utilized it was all pretty similar throughout those three major versions. So I kind of refer to SkyUX 1 as our first generation, and then we had like the second generation of adopting Angular, but there was still a lot of things that internally SkyUX had its own CLI, and just the external availability of functionality wasn't as great. In 2021, right at the end, SkyUX 5 released. It was our first major version that set the precedent where we are maintaining every major version of Angular. So Angular is our technical framework that we're built on top of, and it releases twice a year. SkyUX 5 was the first one that was built on, I'm not going to remember my numbers now, I think Angular 9. And we released, we updated to utilizing Angular CLI. When SkyUX was originally built, there was no command line interface for Angular, so we had to home grow our own. So we worked towards adopting that kind of standard way of doing Angular development with the Angular CLI. We then had in SkyUX 9 this kind of delineation between what we were referring to as the old syntax and the modern syntax. So this is the way in which you build and develop components. So from SkyUX 5 to SkyUX 9, we were evolving the technical best practices, CSS classes around how to build SkyUX. The older way was really focused around our old theme, and the new way was built around our new modern theme. But as of SkyUX 9 in 2023, you could build with a modern syntax and have either visual theme. And we'll get into the visual theme in a second, but I think it's important to note these are essentially two generations of SkyUX, where from SkyUX 1 to SkyUX 2, they were separate code bases. SkyUX 5 through currently what we're on SkyUX 12 is supporting this old way and new way all within inside of our single repo. It's a lot of tech debt and maintenance for us. It means that we might change something and have unintended consequences for folks who are using older, kind of the older way of doing things with SkyUX. And so we're encouraging folks to adopt that new way, and we're working towards how do we kind of end of life that old syntax, those old deprecated classes. And we're still working on that. So we're kind of here in 2025. We're maintaining those two realities of SkyUX, all within inside the same code base. So we'll have more to come on what that means and kind of what our potential end of life of that old syntax in SkyUX 14. That is, we think SkyUX 14, which will release in April of next year, is probably the last one in which we'll continue to maintain some of those old classes. And starting in SkyUX 15, we're hoping to be able to remove a lot of that tech debt so that we don't have to continue managing that. So it's a year out, but it's just a call out for those of you who do use SkyUX components as part of your add-ins or other applications. We need to continue working towards adopting the newer way of building spas. All right, so that's the component library, the technical implementation of the design system. Now let's jump into the visual design. So SkyUX has two primary visual designs right now. So we call the visual themes are called default and modern. So original SkyUX came out with a version of default visual theme. It was adopted as part of the second generation of SkyUX and has continued to be maintained. This is kind of it's the standard style you kind of see in a lot of places within inside of our products if you navigate around. So then to contrast, quite literally, is modern visual theme. So the modern SkyUX visual theme started to be iterated on within SkyUX 4 as part of an effort to update the visual design language. And I was really focused initially actually on consumer-facing users, so not necessarily our back office users, but our more donation form type users. Kind of gives explanation as to why that modern visual theme is a little bit, I like to say, fluffier. It's kind of bigger, it's a little bit more kind of just spacious, which isn't always conducive to back office. So we've been maintaining these two visual themes inside the design system. So across multiple generations of SkyUX and just multiple major versions. So right now, where we are here in this line, you can build a SkyUX spa with the old syntax and get default visual theme. You can use the new modern syntax the right way, ideally, to be building things. And you can choose modern or default visual theme. And so for those of you who are building add-ins within our products, our spas have that set within our products. And then the add-in responds to that visual theme by communicating across the add-in iframe to your add-in if you're using SkyUX of what visual theme to show in. We use add-ins internally as well within our products, so we are able to communicate what visual theme we're expecting to see. So default visual theme, we would like to also end of life along with that old syntax. But we also know that modern visual theme is not meeting the needs of all of our users. So we are looking at updating still here? Let me go ahead and share my screen again. Hey, is this back?
I can see you, yes.
Okay. Yay. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, internet and fun remote life. Anywho, so we were just around, hopefully it wasn't too long ago that it cut out that I noticed it. So we're looking at adopting new visual styles to meet the needs of all of our users. So the modern visual theme, that light, bright, big, spacious visual theme, is going to be adapted. And so we're actually going to introduce updated styles as well as user modes for the modern SkyUX visual theme. So the important thing here is if you've already updated and are using modern SkyUX, continuing to maintain your major version will mean that you are enabling that new style automatically. So there's no work that you need to do necessarily in order to get those new styles. So SkyUX V13, that's the version that we'll be releasing this fall, is going to be updated so that when SPAs update to that version, they'll have the new visual theme if they're displaying in the modern visual styles. So we'll see. And there's some images shared on the main stage earlier today, as well as we'll see some more later in this presentation. All right, so how do we achieve this change? Tokens. Tokens has been the buzzword of the SkyUX team on both the design and development side for near on a year at this point. So we started looking at how do we abstract the style values from the technical implementation. In a lot of cases, our components had the styles defined within the components. And so making changes like size changes to how much spacing is contained within a box or an alert message meant that you'd have to go in and touch all the components in order to make those changes. There wasn't a ton of abstraction, although there was some. Tokens is kind of the standard way in which you can meet the needs of defining the standardized design values all the way into the component tokens. So now we have a design repo where we have these layers of tokens to define into our component repo. This is a very large and complicated topic. I have a link on here to share around what you can actually get from design tokens. There's a ton of material out there. If you're not a designer and you just want to utilize SkyUX, you actually really don't need to know anything about this. As I said, the add-ins, Sky add-ins, will automatically react to the theme in brand and mode. We'll get to those. The host spa will tell the add-in what styles to show, and the add-in then can respond to that. So I think it's important to call out, we've done a ton of work. We've just finished tokenizing essentially all of our components. And that's been over 6 months of 2 engineers just every day going through and updating all the tokens. But what this enables us to do is to now say at a high level, my pink color is this, my purple color is this, and we can then create additional style sheets that will allow us to define different types of or different brands or modes. And we'll get into that in a minute. The other way that we get there, so these are some like kind of do's and don'ts around SkyUX. So in order to benefit from the tokenization work we're doing, as well as to have your add-in successfully respond to any of the visual elements and design attributes as we are releasing new brands and modes, you have to kind of stay on the paved road. So Deprecated components are not being updated to be tokenized. So if you're using deprecated components, they still exist within the component repo, but we're at some point going to delete them. It's a matter of internally as well as externally how many folks are using those components, because we don't want to be totally disruptive in a major version. Don't use custom styles. So inline styles. So if you're creating a component and you have specific styles inline, or you have your own style sheet, that's going to override any of the components style values that are defined through the tokens. So if you hard code a button to be green, that green won't change if we make it dark mode, and the green won't change if we're presenting it in another brand or type of experience. So as much as we can avoid custom styles, this is also what kind of current add-ins that don't use SkyUX, that'll be kind of one of our interesting usability things that comes along, is what does it feel like to have an add-in not built on SkyUX from our partners, and have that lay alongside different versions of brands and modes of SkyUX. So I think it'll be an interesting place to kind of learn more together. And then the main call out is for if you do have to build something unique, there's tons of functionality out there that SkyUX doesn't build natively. I always give an example of like a calendar. We don't have a large calendar view like you would see in like Outlook, for example. And sometimes that's necessary inside of your application. You want to be able to have some sort of scheduler. We don't provide that component. We are probably not going to ever provide a calendar view, month view component like that. So there's often very reasonable reasons that application designers and developers would need to create their own components. Using SkyUX CSS classes enables your product to respond to whatever changes we have within our tokens, would then pass in through whatever custom development you've done. All right. So we're working in a number of ways to make sure we're doing the right thing and making that easier. So the work around accessibility standardization is a great example of how we've been taking kind of the holistic approach to components. So this is something we talked about last year around how we kind of standardized and simplified the adoption of inputs. So when we did this work, we could have limited it to really just making screen reader functionality work successfully. It was actually the reason that we had to prioritize it. We needed to make sure that folks building forms had successful accessibility criteria met. So instead of just looking at that problem of how do we maintain accessibility standards with all of these crazy requirements, we also looked at kind of the holistic view of components around like what are the other pieces that engineers are having to build and do per component in order to be successful in just implementing not only to accessibility functionality, but to our overall design system needs. So there's problems even just having like forms line up consistently, having the form field input values line up. So within this work, we enabled design elements like correctly placing the help popovers, placing hint text and having it stylized correctly. All of those pieces are enabled now by inputs. So not only are those popovers and hint texts meeting accessibility criteria, the developer using those components now has a standard way to state it, and you don't have to like place and know, oh, this is this specific class of de-emphasized text that I need to use on hint text. So you don't have to do the manual relationship for accessibility criteria, but you also don't have to do the style pieces. The correct spacing is also added with the stacked input, and the right types of like headers and group input types is also added. So having those form fields more accessible is a great win, and it was a great reason to prioritize this work. But we're able to push in so many other design system standardization around the visual elements, that really removing those spacing class needs and other ways that developers might not be successful in implementing it. Spacing is always an interesting one, especially when talking around our updates from modern visual theme, because in a lot of cases we were seeing developers implement these input fields and then hard coding pixel value spacing. So not even necessarily using our spacing classes, but using pixel values. And a lot of that comes from how developers get access to what the visual style should look like. It comes from a Figma design where a designer has put pixel perfect values, not necessarily the repeatable class values. So there was a lot of learning in kind of how we build and continue to support consistent implementations that then we can take onto like the token and style sheets to then define those new styles and have consistency. Okay, so we've talked about kind of how we got there, what we need to make sure we're doing. Now let's talk about what do we get. So brands and modes with additional style sheets. What does this mean? So right now, we can take a look into the future. We're going to step into 5 years from now, what a possible future could look like for SkyUX components. So SkyUX components, we have a base Blackbaud back office product brand. So this is our product brand that we would want to use in a lot of our software where folks are just doing their work for whatever nonprofit or school you're working for. We might have reasons to actually really want compact spaces. So we might have a style sheet, and I should say each of these boxes are going to represent a style sheet that we can define, and then it impacts the end user's visual styles that they're seeing within the application. So we might want compact mode. FENXT is a great example. We have a lot of accountants over there who just want to rip through all of the data tables as fast as possible with as much data on the screen. They're really prioritizing the efficiency and data density of the functionality versus maybe like the look and feel and the potential to overwhelm. You could also see a need for a spacious mode. I like to call out these of just places where you want maybe like a dashboard where you don't want it over cluttered or too much. You want it to be a little bit more presenting in styles that like would be helpful to show to a board. And so you might want additional features to have spacious mode. These would be modes that most likely would be implemented with inside of our products for specific use cases. So in this example, we would build a product using the base Blackbaud back office. In specific use cases, we would say, let's use compact mode here within this data grid, and let's use spacious mode over here on this action hub to give more of a dashboard feel. So that's kind of the brand and specific product modes. The big exciting piece then is the user mode that can lay on top of that. So dark mode, which I know everyone is always very excited about, especially in like the developer space. This is something that gets our engineering teams very excited as well. Being able to lay a set of styles that impact the ability to see everything in dark mode versus light mode, so that as you navigate around the internet, and if you are a dark mode user and you have so many websites that do support dark mode now, and you get to a Blackbaud product and you're like, well, that's bright, that's too much, we'd be able to enable so that products could have that dark mode. And so that'll be something like we talked around all of those steps that are required in order to be successful. We're working with our internal product teams who build those products to make sure that they are not inline styling, right? So if you use dark mode, but you've hard coded the background color of a page, we can apply dark mode styles all we want to that page. It's not going to matter because you've hard coded it white. So there's work we are doing internally to ensure that our product teams building the applications are doing it in a way that makes all of this possible. So it's really exciting from just that kind of standard use case. It expands what we currently have, which is a single light mode theme, into some different variation. The even more exciting piece is the enablement of product branding. So Just Giving is another product we have here at Blackbaud. It has its own very specific brand within the market. It's a consumer-facing application, and they have found a visual style that really works for them in the market. But we also have a lot of value within inside Blackbaud's platform to adopt and utilize that because of the limitations of SkyUX only having one theme, they haven't been able to adopt. So now we're actually able to create and have created a Just Giving product brand style sheet. So Just Giving internally can start utilizing SkyUX components in spas or even just general platform services that we have that have different UIs attached to it. And they're going to get all the same benefits, being able to have some sort of compact mode, a spacious mode, have a dark mode apply to it, but we'll be able to create that product specific brand. And then going into our future time machine box of endless possibilities that who knows when we'll actually be able to successfully do, I like to start thinking around an education expressive product brand. I mentioned in last session how I've gotten to sit in on middle schoolers providing feedback on our visual elements of the design system. And they just would like some more color in their lives, which is fair. If you look at our modern theme, it's pretty stark white. It doesn't have a ton of excitement in it. And so some sort of expressive, more colorful version of SkyUX components to allow those users to have that more exciting experience would be helpful. And they get all those other pieces as well. And then finally, one other piece we're thinking around is the enablement of customer branding. So customers who purchase Blackbaud products would like customer branding. We have some customer branding enabled with inside, like the sign-in experience, for example, where you can have your logos and colors represented within that authentication workflow. We have some customer branding experiences enabled in BDCRM, which is currently working towards SkyUX adoption. So this is also functionality to support that future need of being able to enable customer-facing branding. So figuring out what the set of values that will enable customers to have access to then set colors with inside their spas. So if you bought a product at Blackbaud and you really wanted another component other than button will someday come to my mind, but you really wanted all your primary buttons to be orange, I mean, you could have it if you really wanted it. And it could also then reply to dark mode. So figuring out how to have all these style sheets and then how we can enable different types of user experiences is what all of this kind of tokenization work has led up to. And just to give some like visual, although Andy kind of stole my thunder in the main stage today, here's an example of what that compact mode looks like. So having the kind of more spacious standard grid implementation, but also have the ability to maybe have compact. And whether that's, we know this list is always going to be used by users who want to see as much data as possible, or if we want to give users the ability to switch in and out of those compact experiences for the list, we're continuing to like evaluate and understand user needs there. I was realizing we've got like 1 minute left. And then here's also an example of what dark mode could look like. It's pretty straightforward, just make it all dark. But all of this is being enabled through those additional style sheets and user modes, giving the user the ability to choose how they see that experience. And actually, I think that's kind of it. So we'll end it there. Let me see if there's any questions that came up in the chat, or if anyone has anything they want to add, please feel free to reach out. Let's see. Can you define custom colors to use in SkyUX components to match brand-defined style guides? Yeah, so there will be the ability for external consumers of SkyUX to define their own design token repo and basically take SkyUX and define any styles that you want to apply to that. So you could adopt any brand styles that you want with SkyUX components. And then specifically within Blackbaud products, we don't currently have any product, I should say customer branding of our products planned. But that is something that we will be able to do now with the way that the components are tokenized. Is it possible to not use the modern theme in RENXT? We have a number of custom Sky add-in designs with SkyUX, and hence the homepage was a challenge to modern theme. It's extremely difficult to make them look like native tiles. So to not use, so within your add-ins, you can use whatever theme you would like. You could force it into a specific theme, and we have different themes kind of show up in different product areas as needed. But so you could keep it in default if you want. The modern theme is changing and kind of back to the, if you're using SkyUX to build your add-ins, the next major version of SkyUX is going to have new visual styles for those, for that theme. So I guess make sure to take a look there. If there's more specific question there, please feel free to reach out and email me. I'd be happy to talk more. All right, those are all of our Q&As. And I guess we are at time. So thanks everyone for joining. It was fun to cover this topic. And as I said, please reach out. My inbox is open for all of y'all using SkyUX out there or interested in using SkyUX. We welcome feedback and questions. So have a good one. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I did launch the survey for everyone, so if you don't mind just taking a minute to fill that out, we really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.